All right. So, 13th chapter, Kshetra Kshetrajna Vibhaga Yoga. 18th verse. So, we are looking at this one. Jyotisham api tajyotihi tamasah paramuchyate jnanam jneyam jnanagamyam hridi sarvasya vishtitam. Iti kshetram tatha jnanam jneyam choktam samasatah madbhakta etad vijnaya madbhavayo upapadyate. Prakritim purusham chaiva vidyanadi ubhavapi vikaramscha gunamschaiva vidhi prakriti sambhavan. Karyakarana kartrutve hetu prakriti ruchyate purusha sukha dukkhanam bhoktrutve hetu ruchyate. Purusha prakriti sthohi bhunkte prakritir jan gunan karanam guna sangosya sadasadyoni janmasu. 23rd, upadrashtanumantacha bharta bhokta maheshwara paramatmeti chapyuktah dehesmin purushah parah. Ya evam vetti purusham prakritim cha gunai sah sarvatha vartamanopi nasa bhuyo bhijayate. Dhyanenatmani pashyanti kechidatmanatmana अन्ये सांख्येन योगेन कर्म योगेन चापरे. So, Bhagavan is telling Arjuna that he is continuing to explain the difference between Kshetra and Kshetrajna. Right? And we've technically understood what it means, the difference between the two. One is the observer, the other is the observed. One is the enjoyer, the other is the enjoyed. One is the subject, the other is the object. The subject is the Kshetrajna. Wherever there's Nya Dhatu coming, Nya Dhatu represents Jnanam. The Nya Dhatu, in fact, in Sanskritam, there are about 2000 plus Dhatus. And all the words in Sanskritam are known to have come from those 2200 plus Dhatus. And there is a meaning for each Dhatu. Like Ram is a Dhatu. So from Ram comes Ramaha. It goes through transformations and the word Ramaha comes. So Ramaha means, so there are different kinds of meanings you can take out in Sanskritam. One is called Vachyartha, which means the word meaning. The word has a meaning in colloquial and transactional parlance. There is a meaning to the word. Then there is something called as Vyutpatti Artha. Vyutpatti means we go to the etymology. Etymology means you go to the dhatu. So whatever is the meaning of the dhatu, then that word, it is derived from that word also gets the meaning because of dhatu has that meaning. Right? Like then the third meaning is Lakshyartha. Lakshyartha or Gudartha. Lakshyartha means it is the intended meaning. The word doesn't, you're trying to say it's like space. When you say space, Atma is space. Atma is not space. It is, the experience of it is like space. So like that, there are three meanings of a word. So here, like Ram, for example, means, there are two meanings. One is Ramate. So one to be established in oneself, be established. Ram also means Agni Tattva. Right? So Ra, the word Ra itself, there is friction, if you notice. Right? So that's the difference between Rama and Krishna. So Rama has this friction, movement, and it generates a certain form of energy, urja. And Ram is, that comes from the dhatu Ram. Ram is essentially, also if you in the chakras, if you see, the Mooladhara is Lam. There is Bijaksharas for each of the chakras, right? Mooladhara is Lam. Swadhisthana is Vam. Manipuraka is Ram. Ram is Bijak for Agni. Desires, all of that. And it's also the Urja, the Shakti that you can also generate from Ram. And also to be established means to be So Ramaha means Ramate. Yaha Ramate Saha Ramaha. The one who's established within himself is Rama. That is what it means. In the same way, here the when Nya Dhatu comes, if you go into the Sanskritam Dhatu Patha, Nya means Jnanam. That's it. Nya Arthaha iti Jnanam. That's all. Jnanam is the meaning of the Nya Dhatu itself. So, which is why many places where knowledge is spoken about, Nya comes there. And Kshetrajna means that Nya Dhatu, when it's added to Kshetra, it means Kshetra is inanimate. This is what is shown here. Kshetra does not have a life of its own. When the Nya gets attached to it, consciousness gets attached to it, that is when it gets life. So Nya is Jnanam, but what Jnanam is this? This is Jnanam is one way of looking at is knowledge, but Nya also means consciousness, awareness. Awareness of being aware. Electricity, for example, is energy, but is there consciousness in electricity? In that sense, it's still inanimate. It is still jada. There is no consciousness in it. But in a human being, there is consciousness. In animals, there is consciousness. So this consciousness is essentially, the consciousness means what? The awareness of existence, that I exist. This awareness is there. That awareness is knowledge. That is jnanam. So kshetra as it is inanimate or jada. When nya gets attached to it, kshetrajna, it becomes animate. It becomes life form. So Krishna is telling him about, start looking at this difference everywhere. When you start looking at this difference, you will know that what you are. You are the Nya, you are not the Kshetra. That is the process. Drik Drishya Vivekaha, the Viveka of or understanding or discrimination of what is Drik, what is the Drishya and who is the Drik. Drik means the one who is seeing or observing, and what is the Drishya. So this difference he's trying to bring about. So in this particular verse, he's saying, Abhi, which is this? He's saying, now he's trying to explain this particular jnanam or kshetrajna that is there, that is like light. Jyotisham api tad jyotihi tamasaf paramuchyate jnanam gyeyam jnanagamyam hridi sarvasya vishtitam. So I said last time, this is a very, very a phrase that my guru would use very frequently. Jyotisham api tad jyotihi tamasaf paramuchyate. Jyotisham api tad jyotihi, which means anything that you consider as light, as jyotihi, this is jyoti which is above that. So jyotisham api tad jyotihi, that jyoti which is of all jyoti. Jyotisham api, of all jyotihi, that jyoti is the jyoti which removes tamasaf paramuchyate. It is above tamasa, all forms of ignorance. No darkness can cover this light. Like for example, when the clouds come, the clouds can come and it can cover the sun. He's saying this is that entity, nothing can cover it. It is so shining bright, nothing can cover it. And even if we say clouds come and cover the sun, it is in our perception. You go behind the clouds and see the sun, there is no covering there. Sun is bright, shining in its own state. Ramaha. Surya is Ramaha. It is self-illuminating. It doesn't require an element from the outside. Right? Then jnanam jneyam jnanagamyam hridi sarvasya vishtitam. So he's saying this knowledge, this nya, this jyotihi is the jnanam jneyam jnanagamyam. It is the It is knowledge, jnanam. It is jneyam. It is something that you must try to attain to. It is something that you should obtain, that knowledge. Jnana gamyam. It is also the goal of all kinds of knowledge. All kinds of aparavidya that you think of, the goal is this paravidya. If you investigate, if you go and have an investigation with somebody saying you wanting to know something, why do you want to know something? Like how Ramana would do. Ramana Bhagavan, anybody goes and asks him a question, they'll say, Bhagavan, I'm feeling very sad. He's saying, who is feeling sad? Well, I am feeling sad. Who is that I? No, this is this I. Which I are you talking about? No, this body, me, this thing. Who is saying this body? No, this mind. This mind is telling. Who is telling this mind? இப்படியே போட்டு கன்ஃபியூஸ் பண்ணி விட்டுருவாரு. he'll, he'll make the person either run away or to self-realization. Because he is not interested in time pass. Right? He's directly, straight, wanting to go there. So in that way, you are jnanam, jnanagamyam, jneyam, the object of knowledge, knowledge itself. The objective of your whole search for knowledge is this goal of knowledge, and jnanagamyam. When you're attaining or when you're going towards that, what you're going towards is also that knowledge. Right? And which means every other knowledge is going towards this knowledge only. So you put everything you take, if you're wanting to understand something, you wanting to be in a certain place, you want to do something, investigate. Saying investigate. Who is wanting to do this? Why are you wanting to do this? At the end of the day, it will come to a place you're saying that because I want to be happy, I want to be comfortable, I want to be joyful, I want to be peaceful, I want to be blissful. So that there is a beautiful line I read somewhere. I may not be saying it right, but I'll give it a shot. So somebody went to the Buddha and said that I want peace. So Buddha says, what is this peace? You don't know what is peace. What are you talking about? Drop peace. He says, okay. Then he says, I want. He says, what is it that you want? You don't know what you want. You're just saying, I want. What is it that you want? Say, drop the want. So what remains? I. So if you drop the object that you're looking for, you drop the process that you're trying to, or the desire that you're generating, you drop both. What remains is peace. What remains is joy. What remains is peace. What remains is happiness. So in that sense, saying if you're trying to go towards all knowledge, you try to consolidate and try to bring it and see that why at the end of the day I want to be happy. And where is this happiness? Then you go in search of that. So it will come to this point only to say that Jyotisham api tad jyotihi, that jyotihi is within you. It is there within you. Sarvasya vishtitam. It is there in all living beings. You're not special that way. Yes. Why you are special? Because you have the opportunity to understand this. You have the opportunity to investigate this. You have the opportunity to touch that, attain that, and be in that. Otherwise, the same consciousness is there in everything. It's there in a small rabbit. It's there in a small bird. It's there in a small worm. It is there in a big tiger and a lion. It is there in an elephant. It is also there in you. It is there in your child. It is there in an old person. It is there in a human, a man. It is there in a woman. It is there in a young fellow. It is there in a middle-aged man or a middle-aged woman. It is there everywhere. Sarvasya Vishtitam. It is not unique. But what makes you unique is your opportunity to know this fact. Knowing this makes you unique. And then he says, 19th verse, Iti kshetram tatha jnanam jneyam choktam samasatah madbhakta etad vijnaya madbhavayah upapadyate. Madbhavaya upapadyate. So this way I have told you about the nature of the field, the meaning of knowledge, jnanam, and the object of knowledge. And he says, only those who are in my madbhaktaha, only those who are in some form surrendered to me, some form trusting this knowledge that I'm offering, only they can understand this. They can understand it and they can come make any progress. See, like we say, when we are children, when we are kids, we listen to our parents. We hold our parents as our greatest heroes. Say that they know everything, either the mother or the father. The child usually holds one to say that, my mother, whatever she says is right, or my father, whatever he does is right. And then gradually they grow up to realize that may not be true entirely. But then during the process, by holding on to what they are saying, you're absorbing, imbibing, you're learning, and you're developing yourself. So even as a child, we hold up to a role model, we hold up to something, and because of that Shraddha, this is Shraddha. Shraddha is not blind faith. Shraddha is not going and breaking coconuts at the temple and doing Topakaranam and going Pradakshinam. That is not Shraddha. Shraddha is this, where I'm looking at this and I'm saying, this, I think I want to be in that place. I want to absorb this person. I look up to this person. There is a certain level of reverence. There is a certain level of role modelship that you create. Why? Because you think wherever that person is, he's in the best place possible. Right? Even if you go to a small hut where, um, there's a small child and the father may not be earning much. He may be going and drawing a fruit cart or a vegetable cart and bringing home daily wages. The child will still look up to the father. Since you see, father is earning so much, working so hard for me, for my family, all of that. The child will look up to the father because this, of course, the child is not exposed to several other people. That is one thing. But also, it sees that there is a certain level of genuine engagement in the father. And hence, naturally, the child gets drawn. So in this way, when we get drawn to a guru or a master or a teacher or Bhagavan or some form, that Shraddha we have to develop. Mad Bhakta, we're saying, my devotees, they'll understand this. What does it mean? It is when I connect with Krishna in a way where I have, not in a very distant way, not in a way that I put mala, do arati and do archana, not just that. But I look at his life, I study his life, I listen about him, I listen to pravachanams, I talk, I have a communication and I look at how he lived his life. That is why there is a difference between fantastical gods and people like Rama, Krishna, some of them, because they've lived. They've lived and they have shown how one can live, even though they may have had, we'll say they've got superhuman powers, all of that. As much as superhuman powers you have, you'll also have superhuman problems. We don't get superhuman problems, right? So he had to solve bigger problems because he had much power. We don't have such power. At the same time, we don't have such problems also. Right? So when we look up to this entity or this form or this Purusha or this Devi and all that, there is a certain Shraddha we develop. And through this Shraddha, this knowledge comes to, makes it easier for us to understand this knowledge. So that is what Krishna is saying. By Mad Bhakta, being my Bhakta, etad vijnaya madbhavaya upapadyate. So you get to understand this or attain this knowledge by being my Bhakta or having that reverence and Shraddha. And my means, I'm saying any form that you hold high, you have to have that level of reverence. And then there is learning and understanding that flows. Prakritim purusham chaiva vidhyanadi ubhavapi vikaramscha gunamschaiva vidhi prakriti sambhavan. Now he is going into a slightly different tone of conversation. In it's the same idea, but now he's saying that, listen, what you're looking at, this kshetrajna, is essentially it appears as though right now, it appears it's difficult for us to recognize this kshetrajna within us, right? We have to work hard. It is not available to us through our senses because our senses are outward bound. But when we make ourselves a little inward, that is when you realize that maybe there is something else that is operating through me. When I'm sleeping, still everything is working. Who's making this work? When I'm not thinking, also there are things that are happening. When I'm suddenly some emotions are rising, suddenly something is happening. Who's driving and who's making these things happen? So when you recognize that there's something else working within, and then you look at this and I say, oh, maybe there is a silent observer and there are activities that are happening. And this, he says, is Purusha and Prakriti. Okay? So in the 20th verse, he says, Prakritim Purusham Chaiva Vidhyanadi Ubhavapi Vikaramscha Gunamschaiva Vidhi Prakriti Sambhavan. So understand that the Prakriti and Purusha, now he is bringing in the Sankhya Yoga here. Okay. Sankhya Yoga talks about this whole process. Sankhya Yoga written by Kapila Muni. There is a Muni called Kapila Muni, and he wrote the Sankhya philosophy, which was then, it got the status of Sankhya Yoga. One of the darshanas. Now, this one is the Sankhya Yoga essentially, and Bhagavad Gita essentially uses Sankhya Yoga as, or Sankhya philosophy as the background. From a philosophical standpoint, if you look at it, it uses Sankhya Yoga as the background for describing many ideas. So here he's doing the same thing. Krishna is saying there is a Purusha, there is a Prakriti, which means there is something that is that you're observing, and there is something that is being observed. There is, and that which is being observed, the Prakriti or the manifestation, is made of three gunas. Triguna. So it is Trigunatmika. Trigunatmika means it comprises of three gunas, which means Prakriti. If you see Prakriti as an entity, through the three gunas, it is manifesting itself in the world. Sattva, Rajas, Tamas. And Purusha, where is Purusha? Purusha is also there. It is their silent observer. And Sankhya Yoga says both this Purusha and Prakriti are beginningless, Anadi. That is what the Sankhya Yoga says. It is Anadi, means it doesn't have a beginning. Now, doesn't matter for us whether it had a beginning, did Prakriti come from Purusha, they came out together, they are something there. All of that doesn't make sense really, right? Intellectually, we can keep thinking, talking this, that, other. But from our experience standpoint, we are experiencing both all the time. We are experiencing manifestation. We are also experiencing the observer. So when you're looking at the observer, or when you're sitting and observing, and you're observing the one who is observing. See, look at this. When you sit for meditation and you say, okay, now I'm just going to observe. You're observing objects. First you'll observe the objects. Then later when you bring your attention inwards, you'll say that, okay, now let me observe my thoughts. So there are thoughts arising, right? Now thoughts are rising. So somebody is observing the thoughts. So you're looking at the thoughts, looking at the thoughts. And then for a moment, you'll also notice that who is this who's observing the thoughts? So very interesting when you do some of these experiments, you will notice that somebody knows that someone is watching the thoughts. Because that watching of the thought is also a thought. It goes into a very subtle level of observation. And when you and then when you do that, you will notice that you are becoming aware of that which is aware. So loop Maria. It's kind of a loop. So you've got the thoughts. Now you say, okay, I am going to observe my thoughts. The thoughts are generating, falling, thinking this, thinking that. And then suddenly you withdraw yourself from that act of observing the thought. You will notice that somebody is actually observing the thought.
Earlier version also we were explaining about this, I think, sir.
Correct. So this one, so this idea comes repeatedly. When you say Purusha and Prakriti is Anadi or beginningless, how do you know where is that place within you? Where do you know that you've stopped becoming the object and you're just the subject? Because in our experience, both coexist, right? When I'm observing, there is a thought that is telling inside of me that I am observing. How are you observing? The observation is an act of thought. Because you've made up a decision. Okay, now I'm going to observe. Thoughts are coming, this is coming, happening. No, 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 no. I should just observe. No, no, no. I should just observe. So isn't that a thought? That's a thought. But there is something behind which knows that this is a thought. That is also there. So if I say this thought which is observing, this observing thought is Prakriti. As an example, just to correlate. So that is there. The act of it's an act of observation. It's an act. Act has to be an activity or a movement. So when I'm actively observing, that is assuming that is Prakriti, then behind that act, there is something that knows that something is acting. And that you can't explain. That is Purusha. So can you would you be able to pull one out from the other? Because when you are knowing that, okay, something is observing, that knowledge and the act of because the act of observation is taking you to that knowledge. Understand this. Prakriti is taking you to Purusha. Shakti is taking you to Shiva. So he's saying something very, very subtle or profound in that way. He's saying all of this activity that's happening, it is Prakriti, and then there is a Purusha behind it. Both are beginningless, which means you can't say that something came from something. Both have been always there, Anadi. And this is what Sankhya Yoga says. And Sankhya Yoga says this, and in a way, it also says that Prakriti is nothing but the moment you recognize the I. Recognition of the I is Prakriti. Being in the I is Purusha. Recognition of the I. It is like saying, I am there, I am. And then I see myself in the mirror. It is the same I I'm seeing in the mirror. But that seeing is Prakriti. It is Shakti. So I am, but the recognition of I am. Just sitting, I am here. But there's a recognition inside my mind saying, I am here. That recognition says that is Shakti. So both are there. Shiva is there, and that recognition is also of Shiva is also there. So Purusha and Prakriti both are coexisting. And this comes, Prakriti expresses that once the recognition of I is there, there is this expression in the world as Trigunas. When we get up in the morning, the first thought that comes before any thought is the I thought. Nan irken. I am there. I am here. After that, only other thoughts come. That I thought is the first thought that comes. That I thought in itself is Prakriti. Because the moment I thought comes, there is a recognition of that I thought, and then immediately it explodes into three gunas: Sattva, Raja, Tama. And then from there, it goes outward. It starts looking at the world, which is why it is always recommended Sit down in meditation for a few minutes when you get up. Always do this. It's very beautiful. Don't get up and rush out. Don't get up and do this, that, and the other. Just observe that. Sit there and observe for a little while. Get up, sit down and observe. Don't bring this thought, oh, I have to do this, I have to do that. No. Just shh. That you will then realize it will want to rush out. This is Prakriti. It wants to rush out. It wants to go break into the Trigunas and the world of manifestation. So this is, he says, Vikaramscha gunamschaiva vidhi prakriti sambhavan. And then he goes on to say in the 21st verse, Karya karana kartritve hetuf prakriti ruchyate purusha sukha dukkhanam bhoktritve hetu ruchyate. So he says in creation, material energy or Shakti is responsible for cause and effect. And this cause and effect that happens, it is happening in matter. And matter is experiencing happiness and sukha dukkha. But it is associated to the soul or the Atma. It says the Atma is experiencing sukha dukkha. It is like when you put beautiful Spadika Lingam and you put manjal, turmeric, pal, you put, take that color. Spadika Lingam. It will take the color of whatever padartha you use to do abhishekam, dravyam that you use to do abhishekam. It will take that color. So if somebody comes and when somebody is just passing by and you've just done kunkuma abhishekam to the Spadika Lingam, they'll say, hey, beautiful red color. They'll say that. The Spadika Lingam has no problem. Say, okay, red color, fine. So the Spadika Lingam, you go and ask, are you red in color? Say, yeah. And later, a little while later, finishing one pradakshina, the person comes back and says, Manjal Abhishekam now. Oh, where is that red color thing gone? There's a yellow color substance here. Then go and ask the Spadika Lingam, are you a yellow color? Yes, I'm yellow color. You put whatever color, it will take that color. Because the nature of it is Vairagya. It is Viragaha, which means it doesn't have any form, it doesn't have any color of its own. It takes on the color, but the color doesn't stick on it. So in the same way, Purusha Sukha Dukkhanam Hetuhu, it feels as though the Purusha is happy and distressed, all of that. But actually, no, it is painted upon the Purusha. So, then the 22nd verse, he says, Purusha prakristho hi bhunkte prakriti jan gunan karanam gunasangosya sadasadyoni janmasu. So when this Purusha enters Prakriti, then it enjoys all of this. Till that it is Jada. Prakriti is Jada. Understand this. This is what we said. Kshetra and Kshetrajna, difference of that. Prakriti is Kshetra. It is the field. It is Jada. And when the Purusha enters it, the Jna, the knowledge or the consciousness or the Purusha enters the Prakriti, then it becomes a life form. And that life form, it takes birth in different wombs. This Purushaha Prakritihi Sthaha. Sthaha means enters or goes in, seated, goes there. He bhunkte Prakriti Jan Gunan. It desires to enjoy. It wants to enjoy. Karanam Guna Sangosya. He says, the cause of the attachment, Purusha gets attached to Prakriti. And because of that, Sat Asat Yonihi Janmasu. It then is born into different kinds of wombs. Purusha enters Prakriti and it feels that it is now an individual identity. And through that process, because of this identification, because of the attachment, because of the sangha, sangosya, it is now having to be born. Till they're separate, till you keep it that way, it doesn't have any particular, there's no attachment, there's no association, and there is no this birth death cycle. It is jada. Prakriti is there. Like, for example, you go to a different planet or a different star or a different celestial, whatever planet you go, that's there. There is no life form there. There is Purusha has not entered in that sense. See, compared to what we have in Earth, planet Earth, compared to that, life form hasn't entered. There's no, you don't see a blade of grass growing. There is just rocks and stones. But here it grows, it moves. So there are 6 things they say for any being or any creature, anything to be identified as a being. Asti, to be. Jayate, to be born. Asti, jayate, vardhate, it grows. Viparinamate, it changes. Viparinamate, vardhate, viparinamate. The next, last is pranashyati. 6th is, then one is decay, kshayate. It decays and pranashyati. It dies. It decays and dies. So it is there, it grows, it changes. No, it is there, it is born, which means as in the seed form it is there, that is asti. Then jayate, it is born, like a sapling comes out. Then it grows, that is vardhate, it keeps changing form, viparinamate. Then kshayate, it decays, and then it dies, pranashyati. These 6 things any being goes through. And that which doesn't go through that, there is that Purusha has not entered there. But the moment Purusha enters, it thinks it's an individual entity. I am this plant that is growing and becoming this, and I am dying. These are my branches, these are my leaves, these are my fruits, these are my flowers. This is what we also do. So same thing, this happens. This happens because that Purusha has now come in and suddenly it has become associated with Prakriti. Right? So he is just explaining the Sankhya philosophy to try and understand how this Purusha, the Prakriti as an idea exists, and how do you perceive it. As I said, Purusha and Prakriti are anadi, they're existing within us in that way. Because for us to be rest in Purusha, the act of observation itself, if you are being in Purusha, an act of observation, there is Prakriti. So both, you can't take away one from the other. And that is sufficient for us. That's all right. It's okay to recognize that both are existing, coexisting, and always been there. But I can be in a state where I can not go out into the world through the 3 gunas. I can hold myself within. This is a possibility that is available to me. And that is why he is introducing the difference of kshetra, kshetrajna, or in the other verse he talks about Purusha Sukha Dukkhanam. So Sukha Dukkha is associated to Purusha. Because Purusha has entered into Prakriti, we think we give everything to Purusha. It is not the Purusha that is experiencing that. Right? So, correct. And then Prakritim Purusham Chaiva Vidyanadi Ubhavapi Vikaramscha Gunamschaiva Vidhi Prakriti Sambhavan. 20th verse, right? So that is where he tries to bring this idea of Sankhya philosophy. So we looked at till the 22nd verse, which is Purusha Prakristhaha hi bhunkte Prakriti Jan Gunan Karanam Gunasangosya Sadasad Yoni Sat Asat Yoni Janmasu. So by this association, we are having to be born again and again and again. Okay. So 22nd verse, we'll pause here today. We'll pick up next week. ॐ कायेन वाचा मनसेन्द्रियैर्वा बुद्ध्यात्मना वा प्रकृते स्वभावात् करोमि यत् सकलं परस्मै नारायणायेति समर्पयामि सदाशिवायेति समर्पयामि जगदम्बिकेति समर्पयामि सद्गुरुनाथायेति समर्पयामि हरि ओं तत्सद्गुरुभ्यो नमः हरि ओं गुरुदेव